Alright guys, so I don't know what triggers it, but one of my videos came up on my own suggested timeline, and I realized an older video I had done where I compared Amazon to a couple other load boards. That got a ton of views, and I guess I never paid attention to it. So, obviously, for people to view my videos, it's got to be topics that you guys want to see. Comment below what interests you, what I can try and show and offer my humble 2 cents with. But I did a video a while back where I compared a couple different load boards, and for some reason that got a lot of views. So Monday I'll be loading out of Memphis, and so this is XPO's load board. Now the funny thing is, I use a dispatch service. They're called Smart Hop. The funny thing is, I've worked with XPO before, and sometimes I would find some decent loads. My dispatcher gets loads from them that are not on this board, or there's loads on this board and he gets a way better price than is here. So best I can tell, there's individual brokers within, and if you have a relationship with them, I think you can negotiate. And I know a lot of us dig on, we go to an application, you accept it, or you place a bid and you go. But I think there's something to be said for having that, phone conversation and getting to know a specific broker. Anyway, so for some reason, I put in Memphis to anywhere. I run dry vans, and so these are going to be dry van loads. So there's a bit of a deadhead for this first one, and it's a 300-mile load paying $900. I'm not mad at that. That hits my target of about $1,000 a day. I'd like to be over it, but if I were closer to that and I didn't have to deadhead, that would fit. It's over $3 a mile, and it comes real close to that $1,000 for the day. That would fit. And so this next one, is probably coming from the same shipper, a lot more weight, but because it's going to Dallas, it pays less. Right now, if you go to Pennsylvania, you're going to encounter weather and everything else, and Dallas just isn't going to pay as well. That's just the reality of it. So that one, it's 600 miles. It's still one day's work. You load the 25th, unload the 26th. It's $1,600. I'd have to think about that one, but it's not a bad deal. The only drawback is it unloads at 11, and if you're trying to grab another load out of Dallas, that might make it tough. So then if you have to sit another day till the 27th, now you're looking at 3 days for $1,600, then it's kind of not worth it. So here's another load going out towards Pennsylvania, $3 a mile, $2,700. Again, that one it's worth it, except for the weather that way could be a little bit rough. I just came from that direction. If you travel by day, it's doable. Night can be a little bit questionable because of ice. And so here's another one going to Pennsylvania, $2,700. This one's going to Kansas, plastics, 1,700 pounds, $228 a mile. It's a little bit on the cheap side. And from where I am, the deadhead's a little less. So here from Union City, Tennessee, out to Illinois, It's a 500-mile load for 900 bucks. I think I'd pass on that, or maybe try to give them a bid for a little bit more. It's 43,000 pounds, so you're going to be consuming fuel. There's basically another load to match it. There's one to Des Moines, Iowa for under $2. There's another one for under $2. Little Rock to Compton. Going west is always cheap. And it's cheap because you get good paying loads coming out of California. And so the market is typically hot there. And brokers know you want to get there, so you could get, a $9,000 load leaving California. And so brokers play that game. They do. So here's one from Missouri to, I believe that's IA. Where is that? Damn it, I don't know all my states. Doesn't that suck? Yeah, that's going right up into the cold and the snow. I think they were expecting a storm this weekend, and not sure I'd want to do that. $2.23 a mile. There's $1.68 a mile for a 40+ thousand load. Now here's one. South Haven, Mississippi, which is really close. Now it pays a little on the low side, excuse me. It's going up into Wisconsin. I would, if I wanted to go that way, consider bidding it a little higher. The upside to medical supplies is you can run logbook exempt on a load like this because of COVID. The 2020-02 declaration of emergency was extended, I believe, till the end of March. And so you could run logbook exempt on a load like this, and even if you follow all the rules like I do, you take your breaks when you're supposed to, you take your 10-hour reset and everything else. The upside to these loads is it doesn't contribute to your 70-hour work week, and so if it takes you 2 days to get there, those 2 days, it's almost like you didn't work. And so that kind of frees you up some time to grab loads coming back without having to do a reset, a 34-hour reset. Just an FYI. And so we look at medical supply loads a little differently. This one here is a $1.97. I don't know why this looks familiar. I don't think we've done this one. Anyway, that's going up to Ohio. I just came through Ohio. It's not really bad. It's a little on the cheap side. Here you're going to Oklahoma. It's a load that goes from one day to the next. So you could say it's a 24-hour load. They're saying it's $2.25 a mile. You get 1,400 bucks. It's not a bad deal. I'm not really sure what's in that part of Oklahoma, if you'll struggle to find a load coming out. But for 646 miles, 1,400 bucks isn't bad. There's one from Arkansas to Illinois, 523 on the miles, 1,000 bucks, single day. It's a little on the cheap side, but it's food, and so again, that falls into that exemption of hours of service. And so here's one going back to Fort Worth. I can tell you that if Amazon has loads going that way, The Amazon loads usually pay a little bit better. We'll switch to Amazon in a minute, but I think right now Amazon's loads will show low, but come tonight, those will go up a little bit. Here's a load from Little Rock heading over to Texas. It says pallets, so I'm not sure if they're just empty pallets. It's a short haul, but it pays well by the mile. It's almost $4 a mile, so that's profitable. But for me, it struggles to meet like the terminal velocity, if you want to call it that. I'd do it if I needed to reposition myself out of Little Rock because maybe there aren't great loads there. Here's Grenada, Mississippi, heading back over to Pennsylvania. It's cheap on the mileage. I don't think I'd go that cheap back into Pennsylvania. Here's a load from Memphis to McAllen. South Texas is always a struggle to get out of. So you got to get in good to come back. I think there might be another page. Yep. So Memphis to Pendleton, very light load, paying $2.28 a mile. It's a one-day load. It breaks that 1,000-mile mark. It's light, so you won't have much fuel consumption. Indiana's usually good for freight, but I'm kind of leery on going up into that area. Don't know what the weather's like right now, but it's a doable load. Here's a load heading over to Garland. It's a heavy load. You do it in a day, and it's $1,200. Paper, depending on what kind of paper it is, can also qualify as a COVID load. So here's a load from Newport, Arkansas, over to Topeka, Kansas. It's food. It's light. It pays almost $3 a mile. It says call to confirm time. That can sometimes mean that the broker has flexibility, and so that may not be so bad. You may be able to talk them into, hey man, make it earlier so I can find something out. It's a good paying load. It's light, so it won't burn too much fuel. I would look for some outbound freight before I committed to that, just because I'm not familiar with the area. There's a load going to Omaha, heavy, and it takes 2 days. Granted, you would be unloading early in the morning. Now, I can tell you for me, Omaha has a chemical plant. They sell fertilizer. They're chemical totes, and so it requires tanker endorsement. So every time I've gone to Omaha, I've gotten $3.50 and up per mile leaving there. The bigger concern would be how cold is it? Are the roads icy? That kind of thing. I might consider this if I could get a hold of the broker that got me the last load for the chemical totes. And if I can book that as I book this load, I'd probably do it, and all in, my miles would probably end up being, there and then back out of there would probably still average better than 3. So that would make it worthwhile for me. It would be heavy on the way there, but again, it's food. And so it being food qualifies as a COVID load. St. George, Utah, I just wouldn't do because of the weather. Just not something I want to do. This is heading back over towards the Dallas area, almost $2 a mile. I think Amazon might have a better option for that. Here's $1,600 for 600 miles. That's not bad. It's a one-day shot, leaves you in Dallas. I can usually find loads out of Dallas. Here's a load from Kentucky to Kentucky. It's 300 miles, makes you $1,000 almost. You know, that's doable. It's a short, easy run, so you'll save on fuel. You'll be heavy, but you'll do very few miles. Oh, that's a duplicate of the previous one. So they got a few of them. If they're struggling to fill those, they may cooperate a little bit, and you might be able to, you know, push them a little bit and see if you can get $1,100. Here's one heading to Houston. Houston for me has been very hit and miss to get out of. I've had to deadhead a ways out of Houston to find loads. Here's a load heading to Marietta, Oklahoma. I've never worked out of that area, but the drawback, I should say the advantage to this one is you unload early in the morning, and so there's time to grab another load. Here's another one at medical supplies, 1,900 pounds. So again, you can bend the rules a little bit there. The only drawback is, you go from the 26th to the 28th for only $1,200. I think if I wanted to take that, I'd ask the broker if they can move my appointment forward. Otherwise, I don't think it's worth it. You end up sitting around too much. More medical supplies, heading to Jeffersonville, Indiana. It's a one-day shot. You make $1,100. It's light. I'd consider that one. West Memphis back out to Ohio. It's a full load at 41,232 a mile. And you do it from one day to the next. You unload in the morning. Not too bad. Florida. I have no experience with Florida. Never been, never done it. My understanding is you get hit with tolls pretty heavily, and you usually end up deadheading out. So for the sake of not learning my lesson the hard way, I'd stay away. There's another medical supply load. It's not badly paid, but you go from the 26th through the 28th. There's almost $3 a mile, but it's going to Florida. There's almost $3 a mile heading to Kentucky, $1,400. I'd look at that. I'd look at the outbound freight leaving there and see if it's worth it. You know, at 490 miles, it's not a crazy long drive, and 26,000 pounds isn't that heavy. $1,400. You do it in a day. That's money. There's a load to St. George. I won't go that way. Here's a load to Somerset, Pennsylvania. I was just out that way. 2 days for $2,200 at almost $3 a mile. That's a doable deal. Looks like their load board has quite a bit. So here's a load to North Carolina. It can be a little tough getting out of there at $260 a mile. Palletized tools. It's a light load, but 2 days for $1,500. I mean, these loads aren't bad, and so, you know, here's a 6,000 pound load. 500 miles. You do it from one day to the next. You make over $1,000 at $224 a mile, and it's a light load, so it'll be easy on your fuel. This one's heavy. from where I'm at, it's not too bad a deadhead. Only it's going to take 2 days to do the load. You lose a part of the day on the 26th, and you lose the morning on the 28th. I think there's better options. Olive Branch to New York. I just went to New York, and the weather's going to be snowy and icy. It's really light, but I think that per mile needs to be a little higher. Here's $341 a mile for 300 miles, and they're saying you load at midnight and you unload the same night. That's doable. I just have to check and see what Shepherdsville is like to get out of. I mean, the money's right, the miles are short. I'd dig into it and try and work a way out of it. There's a heavy load going to Jersey, $3 a mile, 2 days for $3,000. That's workable. And Jersey, typically you don't struggle to find loads coming out. There's almost $3 a mile. Problem is you're gonna hit weather going that way. If you're familiar with that direction, then you know what you're up against. I'm kind of not. There's another load to Ohio, $227 a mile for 569 miles. That's borderline. I think I'd consider that one. $265 a mile for 772. Takes you 2 days. I'd probably look for something a little easier. But as you guys can see, there are loads out there. So those of you that are, stuck on the Amazon thing and you think that's the only ticket, there's loads here. And like I say, once you do a handful of these loads for these brokers, they'll hear you out and take your bids to go higher. And so there's work here, guys. Let me switch boards. Let's see what Amazon has to offer. This is in the Memphis area. And so here's a load going to Phoenix. It's hard to find loads in Amazon going west. They usually lock those for their preferred vendors. 174 is cheap, but if you're trying to get to the West Coast, it's almost, unfortunately, the norm. If I wanted that load, I'd wait till later on tonight, and hopefully it goes up. But then someone might look at it and say, I want to go home, and they'll just book it at that price. To me, it's a 2-day shot. It makes more than that $1,000 a day I'm talking about. It's an Amazon load, so it's probably going to be really light on fuel. But you actually lose a third day because you don't unload till the middle of the day on Wednesday. So that makes it kind of borderline. And so here's a load heading to Michigan, $1.82 a mile for 744 miles. Here's another one leaving Memphis out to Connecticut. It's under $2 a mile. Loads tomorrow. I'm expecting these loads that load tomorrow will go up a little bit, guys. They'll probably be in the mid-2s come tomorrow. So like this $1,500 load might be closer to $1,800 or $1,900. There's a load going to Aurora. Most of your loads going to Aurora end up paying in the 3s. People just won't take them for less. So there's a load going to Dallas. We were talking about Dallas earlier. Your typical loads from the Memphis area heading over to Dallas ends up being, in the $1,300 to $1,600 range. The market might be a little different now because people are freaking out. It's gotten thin. There's a load going to CLT2 Charlotte. The problem with there is they're bad to unload you. They're slow. They make you drop your trailer and go away. They actually took my trailer and gave it to someone else once, and it's difficult to find loads there. I wouldn't go back. There's a load to Indiana, $1.74 a mile. And as you're looking at these are all trailer required. So they're not power only, and the previous load board I was on was also not power only. Here's a little, what they call a tour. It's an 11-hour tour, pays $800. You know, this is better than the work blocks they're trying to sell you in the contracts, right? It's $809 for 11 hours. Let's say it's 12 hours worth of work. That's better than the $500 or $600 they're trying to pay. And I guess since we were looking at that earlier, you know, there's $115 in fuel surcharge, and so, you know, your true base rate is $1.44. Then they give you $1.15, and so if you look at the contracts that are at, let's say, $500 for your daily solo ones, you know, I guess you could kind of count on about $100 a day per load. So if it's $500 for the block, count on it being like $600 if you include the what do you call it, fuel surcharge. Now looking at these, it looks like you're just going to be going back from the same place back and forth. You're going to be going from MEM2 to MEM1, and then you go from MEM1 to BHM1, and then BMH1 back to MEM2. These are pretty easy loads, and so if that's your thing, short power only loads, that's not a bad day. There's one from Jackson, Tennessee, heading to Dallas. Again, this should go up come tomorrow. This will probably be, you know, $1,400 to $1,600. I've done these loads. They're easy, and the load or the road is relatively flat, so it's not like you're pulling up steep hills like you do in Pennsylvania or anything like that. There's a load going to Ohio for $1.74. It's a team load. Olive Branch to Fall River. Fall River's tough to get out of. There's nothing on the Amazon load board to get out of there. There's another one going to Arizona. This one's not until Tuesday, and so we're now looking at Tuesday loads. So these are going to be cheap just because they're so far out. Anyway, let's check another load. Well, yeah, let's check another load board. Let's see. So here's what the top one's a load to Washington State. I stopped paying for this subscription mainly because my dispatch service books me way better loads than I could find. I didn't see the sense of spending the money, and so you can't see like who the broker is, but it still gives me a barometer of what's out there. So Connecticut, you know, you got 1,100 miles for $3,100, 40,000 pounds. It's pretty close to $3 a mile, but it's a full load. And so there's another one for $3,100. There's a load going to California, which, you know, it's almost 2,000 miles for $2,500. So in this case, the Amazon load, even at the low price, is probably a better deal. And the Amazon load will probably be about the same weight, but you're only running loaded to Phoenix. If your ultimate goal was to get all the way to LA, in theory, if you unload in Phoenix and you deadhead out, you'll actually save money on fuel. And I think the price was a little bit better than this. So you still win if you do it that way. My dispatcher, I know, could find me loads, grocery loads, leaving the Phoenix area. I forget which chain it was, but there's a distribution center. They distribute to all of California there out of the Phoenix area, and the last load I got was one pick, 3 drops, and it ended up about 270 a mile. Wasn't too bad for a day's work. And so the rest of them don't show prices. I'd have to call and do all that. We already did XPO. Convoy. So Convoy has a load 764 miles from Bahelia. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly. That's in the same area. It's close to Memphis. The reason they put bid only is because it's not a lane that they normally do, and they're just not sure what it is. Honestly, they're probably just trying to see how cheap they can get it done, but you know your worth, you know your price. And so there's a load going to Arkansas, 138 miles for 350. There's 218 miles heading to Mississippi. Now, when they show these high and low ranges, you can bid the 169, and if they're going to approve it, if your score with them is good, they'll approve it pretty quickly. If you bid outside of that range, what's going to happen is they won't let you know until like pretty close to the end of the business day. And so they're giving you that range, so you know if you bid within that, you'll probably get approved in 15 minutes. And so there's a handful of these really short hauls. Unfortunately, that is a big part of what they do. So there's another 300. There's a 300-mile load, which, you know, if you bid this at $1,100, you could get it, and that's in the high $2 a mile. I don't know what Pearl River's like to get out of, and they have a couple of them. So odds are, if you bid the 1144, but it doesn't load till Wednesday. Yeah, if it doesn't load till Wednesday, they may stall you out. Yeah, and so their load board's not very active until Wednesday. I think people book stuff on Friday to make sure they had something lined up for first thing Monday. But the rest of these are pretty far out there. Anyways, guys, that's what is in the Memphis area. Don't know how much interest you guys have in Memphis, but I've always liked Memphis. I've always thought there's good loads leaving there. Especially with my dispatch service, they do a pretty good job of getting me out of Memphis. Anyways, thanks for watching.